Property taxes have more than doubled over the past 13 years. Newsflash, who's been in control? Republicans. This is a Republican problem, not a Democrat problem. We keep talking about the Democrats and we got to stop their policies and we got to get them out of office and we can have conservative government, but this problem is a Republican problem. It's risen 63% faster than the population and inflation combined. Local schools and governments are aggressively hiking property assessments every single year, completely ignoring market realities. I often tell people if I could sell my property for what the county has it valued at, I would sell it. And when the legislature tries to limit value by a homestead exemption or appraisal caps, jurisdictions just raise the tax rate. When districts want to avoid tax rate increases, there is a great suspicion that many local government will put pressure on the appraisal district to raise the values. Excuse me. Check on that.
Lose power?
Yeah, it's not plugged in. And I will lose my thing here.
So, can you ask a quick question? How did they do that? What are the methods that they
Do me a favor. Questions at the end there, because if I get it all broken up, I'll mess my own head up right now. All right. Let's see. There we go. No power. Big trouble.
Is this on a switch?
I don't believe so.
Okay, from 2000 to 2013, property tax levy soared by more than 101%. By the way, all these numbers are from the comptroller's office. This is my opinion. These are true numbers. Over the same period, population inflation, which is a common used metric that accounts for the rising cost of funding basic public goods and services, along with economies of scale, rose just 70%. Yeah, I'm still not on. According to the Texas Comptroller's Office 2012 report, there was a 263% increase in the property tax levy from 1992 to 2010. And over that same period, population growth and inflation combined for a hike of just 121%. That's a problem. Next slide. Yes, thank you. Next slide, please. Oh, I'm sorry. Here's what's interesting. Everybody knows it's a problem. Literally everybody knows it's a problem. Here's a quote. Texans are being crushed by property taxes. No government should be able to tax the people out of their homes. Texans should not stand for it. We must remember, property owners are not renting their land. Governor Greg Abbott. I want everybody to listen to me, and everybody's going to watch this video. That's a Republican that said that. You need to call his office, and you need to tell him that a cap is not going to get it done. We have got to have an elimination of property taxes. We have to. We're going to talk about a cap here in a minute. But if he believes, if our Republican governor truly believes we shouldn't be paying rent on our property, then he will do something to lead the way of lowering that immoral tax. Because it is immoral. Why is it immoral? Because you never own your land. Well, what is the true American dream? It's captured in the first three items: life, liberty. And somebody's going to think the pursuit of happiness, that's actually the pursuit of property. That's what that is. It's life, liberty, and the pursuit of property. But you never own your property if you have property taxes. Now, before I keep going, I'm not anti-tax. We have to fund government. I've got no problem with that. I just don't think we should be, and I'm pretty sure our founding fathers would agree, we shouldn't be doing it on the backs of taxing citizens' property so they can no longer own it. Wars have been fought over that. Amen? Absolutely. Republican Party legislative priority for property tax abolishment. This is it, right up here. Abolish the maintenance and operation school property tax and replace it with a consumption tax or other mechanism other than an income tax while broadening the tax base. All those things are very, very important. Eliminate the appraisal board. I get lots of amens when I say that. Eliminate the appraisal board and tax the property at the purchase value or the free market value upon change of hands for local government funding and special district funding. And then school maintenance and operation funds shall be allocated from the state's general fund to the Texas Independent School Districts via an inflation-adjusted per-student allocation. That's a lot of words, isn't it? Here's a question that I have to ask folks around here. How many people know what M&O is? Anybody? Okay. This is a common problem. One of the reasons that the cap sounds so good is because it's really easy to understand. You're going to cap increasing my property anymore by 2.5% or 4% before you give me a say on it. Everybody understands that. A little bit different when you're talking about eliminating or lowering property tax. That gets very complicated. Okay? There is an idea out there. So let me just say first, maintenance and operation is M&O. When you look at your taxes that you get your property tax statement, it is more than one entity taxing. Government, city, and guess what? School. And then you have two different brackets of school taxes. You have M&O, which is maintenance and operation, which pays for your teacher's salary, school buses, keeping the school up and things of that nature. That's maintenance and operation. And then you have the INS, which is interest and sinking, which is your school bonds. Let me be real clear. We're not talking about school bonds today. We're not talking about INS. That stays at the local level where it belongs. Okay? We're talking about the maintenance and operation. Some important facts. How many of y'all have heard we need to eliminate all property tax? Right? That sounds really good, but it's really, really hard, if not impossible. And we're going to talk about why. In order to eliminate the property tax in its entirety and go to a consumption tax, it would require a sales tax of approximately 20 to 22%. Now that is based on not broadening the tax base. Now the problem with that is that number, all of your border cities would go out of business in about 6 months. Why? Well, they would just go jump over to Louisiana to buy their stuff, to buy their cars, to buy their TVs, to buy their clothes, whatever. They would just go across the border, go over there, buy it, and then come back. The border cities cannot handle a 20 to 22%. Now that is without broadening the tax base. The number could be driven down significantly if the tax base was broadened to almost everything. What we call a GDP tax. So GDP would be taxed. That means everything is taxed at every stage. It's called a VAT. It's a European model. I can tell you that a snowball stands a better chance down there with the devil than we've got of getting the VAT passed in Texas. It's just the businesses aren't going to go for it. Half the Republicans aren't going to go for it. It's just not going to happen. It's not realistic. But if we did that, it would actually lower the sales tax from where it is today to about 5.5%. And that's according to the Texas Public Policy Foundation. Let me tell you my problem with that concept. Even though it all might sound good and the numbers sound good and all that, here's the problem. You create a significantly larger socialistic system of government if we do this. If we have a state sales tax to buy down all property tax, that means state government is now funding local government. In rural counties that don't have a tax base, I live in a county that is 66% national forest. There's not a lot of businesses. We could never survive if we just had to live on a sales tax in our county. So what would happen? The state would have to give us some of your money because you have a bigger tax base, right? So if we're doing a statewide sales tax and the state's collecting all the tax, they're going to redistribute it out to pay for county and city governments. That is the worst idea ever. We need local government collecting local government taxes and spending what they have in their area, not going and robbing Peter to pay Paul. Terrible idea. Okay. Next slide. All right. Reality solution. We all know we have a problem. One of the biggest problems we've had is nobody's brought a solution that is actually able to work in reality. Political reality, financial reality, you name it, it's got to be in reality. It's going to be very difficult to get any real permanent property tax relief. Very difficult. It's a huge change. And so we need to be very educated. We need to be very targeted and thoughtful about how we approach this. You just can't go screaming, abolish property taxes. You're not going to even get a bill for it. They're not going to even have the conversation with it. You can't just scream ideology. You've got to bring ideas, and you've got to bring solutions, and you've got to bring proof, too, while you're at it. Okay? We must acknowledge realities and not ask for the impossible. Very important. Next slide. All right, by the numbers. The largest portion of our property tax is the M&O school property tax. It's anywhere from 40, and I've heard it go as high as 62% of our property tax burden. The largest portion by far. It's also the easiest one to replace. And it's what we should be targeting because it solves two problems, not just one. We all know our school funding debacle. We all know it's a mess. See, there's two things we all know. And by the way, this is a bipartisan issue. Property taxes is a bipartisan issue. You want to get Democrats to vote for Republicans? Fix the property tax problem. They'll vote. Absolutely. For sure. But it also will allow us to fix the school funding problem. It will eliminate this whole recapture and Robin Hood and taking money from this school district and putting it off in a black hole, by the way, because there's zero accountability with recapture. Zero. No accounting of that whatsoever. It just goes off into this dark hole of general fund and it's never tracked and accounted for. Okay? But they will take money from one school district and they will give it to another school district. It's called Robin Hood. The Texas State Supreme Court has said that our school funding system is a wreck. Legal, but stupid, is basically what they said. It's a wreck, and it's not working. So we have to address property taxes and school funding at the same time. Here's an interesting. How many of y'all get mad at your commissioners about property taxes? Wrong people to be mad at, actually. Look right here. Counties are only 16% of the property tax burden on average. Cities are 16% of the property tax on average. Look where that number is for schools. Almost 54% on average. Why are we getting mad at the 16%? And not at the 54%. Here's another little interesting tidbit. Local property taxes, we know, account for the majority of funding for our traditional public school system, which is, by the way, we're constitutionally required to do it. And by the way, I support the fact that we do it. It is constitutional. We should fund public education. It's constitutional. You're either for the Constitution or you're not, guys, okay? You can't have it both ways, okay? But in recent years, the state share of public school funding has dropped, shifting the burden to where? Property taxes. In 2011, the state share was 45%. In 2017, that is down to 37%, and projected in 2019 is 31.7%. That's a big problem. And it is getting poured onto our property, and our property, and our property. Everybody's afraid to go do any improvements on their property because they're just going to tax you more. That is un-American. I'm not going to get into this too much tonight, but there were several bills filed in the special session. SB 1 I am going to talk about because you're going to see this come up with SB 2 this session. I already know that it's going to be filed. You had HJR 21, which was the constitutional amendment saying you could no longer collect ad valorem taxes, which is your property taxes, for the maintenance and operation of the public school system. That was a constitutional amendment that we got filed during a special session. And I believe the author was Drew Darby. Yes, I'm almost positive that is correct. HB 358 was an interim solution where we did it in increment by Rep. James White because everybody's scared to make a change. Right? We want them to do the swap dollar for dollar. We're not talking about cutting spending, just so I'm perfectly crystal clear here. We're talking about a dollar for dollar swap. If we start talking about spending, guys, those guys are going to go all run and hide under a rock because they can't handle more than one big thing at a time up there. They just can't. They're politically too scared to do it at the end of the day. Okay? This is a big change. So James White's recommendation, and I like it a lot, is an incremental step between now and like 2030. So every biennial, you buy the property tax down by a certain percentage, and you increase the sales tax by a certain percentage. And then HB 285 was a bill that actually did what we asked it to do. It actually completely eliminated the M&O, and it increased the sales tax, and we're going to talk about amounts because I know everybody's waiting for that. It increased the sales tax to the amount that we needed it to buy completely down without broadening the tax base. We're going to talk about that as well. Let's see where I'm at here. You're on SB 1. So I do want to talk about SB 1 because it's going to be the equivalent of SB 2. Here's what you need to know about property tax and the state Republican budget and all that good stuff. The budget the Republican-controlled legislature passed this past session is based on property taxes increasing 7% each year in the biennium. That is another 14% increase that the state is banking on. They budgeted it. And we're already talking about the fact that property taxes are killing us, and they're baking into the budget a 14% biennium increase. I don't know about y'all folks, but I'm not okay with that anymore. Okay? I am sorry for ruining your dinner. SB 1 last session was a cap of 4%. How many of y'all pay attention to the legislative session? Okay, guys, look. Y'all have got to watch that stuff. You've got to. I mean, that is where the banana bread is made. That is where you know what your reps are really, really doing. You need to know what bills are the hot item bills. You need to know where your reps stand on those bills. You need to watch the debates. It's all live. You can watch it all live from your computer at home. So basically, SB 1 last session was a bill that put a 4% cap from the Senate. The Senate wanted a 4% cap. Pretty sure that's right. It was 4%. cap to where they couldn't increase the spending past 4% without going to the voters for a vote. The House wanted 8%, and they were nowhere in the mood for talking to one another. Remember what I told you earlier? And once you get to a place you can't talk, you can't move the ball at all. Well, SB 1 died. The House killed it. I don't personally think it was a bad thing that they killed it. I'm not mad about it, because here's what SB 1 would have guaranteed. It would have guaranteed that we would have stayed under the oppressive property tax system that we're under, and that we would get at a minimum a 4% increase every year on our already overly burdensome, immoral property taxes. That's the problem. SB 2 is talking about 2.5%. That's not going to happen. We're probably going to land at 4%. That's probably where this is going to land, 4 or 5%. And guess what? We're still going to be under. When you get your tax bill, if that's all they do is put a cap, when you get your tax bill, it is going to have gone up in the store. Do not let them call that property tax reform. It is not. It is not. It is a spending control bill, most certainly. But it is not going to reduce your property tax by 1/2 of 1 cent. Very important. Okay? All right, I'm going to get you to, I don't want to go over all these bills. All right. Scroll, keep going, hit the next one. Keep going. Keep going. Keep going. There we go. All right. So abolish the M&O school property tax. We are talking about eliminating it and going to a consumption tax. What is that going to take? We know exactly what those numbers are. There's no guessing. And let me restate that. We know what those numbers are with no economic assumptions. We know for dollar to buy down what is currently taken in on property taxes across the state will take a 6-cent increase in sales tax. So currently the state income tax is 6.5%. I believe it's 6.25%. Right?
Sales tax?
Yeah. It's state. You have state and then you have city. Okay? State sales tax is currently at 6.25%, I believe. Okay? We're talking about it needing to go to 12.5%. Without broadening the tax base at all. And it will eliminate your property tax by 40 to 60%, depending on where you're at in which county. I don't know what y'all's is here. You would know that better than I would. But it would eliminate 40 to 60% of your property tax rate. Now, why is that a better system than property tax? Because you're free to choose whether you pay the tax. So whatever you pay tax on today, sales tax, whatever that is, we're talking about increasing that 6 cents from the current 6.25. Now, if you put in economic assumptions and you broaden the tax base, which is what we want to do, you could get that number down to 4 cents. And not, you have to be careful where you broaden the tax base, because you don't want the sales tax to become very badly regressive. So you can't broaden the sales tax to food. Can't do that. Can't even have that conversation. But we only actually tax about 40% of our taxable base for sales tax. We only actually have, that's the number we were given at the Senate Select Committee last week. I didn't actually know that. That was news to me. So there is things out there like services that we could tax. Well, what are you talking about? Well, if you go get a haircut, you don't pay sales tax. That's a service. If you go get an architect, you don't pay a sales tax. Those are services. So that is one place that we could broaden the tax base. Okay? And there's a whole list of other ones, but basically if we broaden the tax base just a little bit, don't have to do the whole 60%, then you would eliminate 60 to 40%, and then you get to decide if you pay the tax. So if I don't want to pay the tax and I want to go buy this TV, and I'm like, yeah, I'm not going to pay that tax, what am I going to do? I'll buy the TV. That's called freedom. It is the fairest way. Here's the next thing it will do. It will make sure, and this is very important, I need everybody to listen to me. Everyone will be participating. Everyone. Including illegals. Well, how's that? Well, don't they spend money? Don't they spend money? You betcha. And guess what? They pay state sales tax when they go buy stuff. It will spread it out, equal, fairly, amongst everyone, and get the burden off of our property tax. So, at this point, I will take questions. Yes, sir.
But has anybody thought about the fact that when that tax is out on those sales, it's going to decrease sales?
Actually, the model shows that it will increase, that our GDP will increase, and actually our revenue intake will increase because the money that you're saving on property taxes is going to turn around and get pumped back into the economy. More people will buy property. More people will improve their property. These are all the assumptions that have been plugged into these formulas that actually shows a consumption tax stimulates economy, not reduces it. That is a myth. That is absolutely a myth. How many people in here, and here's the easy answer to this, human beings are kind of easy to figure out. When you go to Walmart to buy a watch, do you ever think about the 8.25%?
I do. One of the price.
Right? When you see that, oh, it's $40, so let me do the math on sales tax real quick. Oh, that's going to add another $4 to it, I won't buy that. That's not what people do. It's not. They just go and say, oh, that TV's on sale for $200, I'm going to buy it. Because it's on sale for $200. Then they go up there, and it's $217. They never thought about that. And then they just pay. That's human nature. But a higher tax, a consumption tax actually will stimulate the economy if you get the burden off the property. If you left it there, it would decimate the economy. For sure. Good question. But it is a myth. 100% myth. If you brought the tax base to everything, you would actually get a lower tax than you have today. Instead of 6.25, it'd be 5.5. If you tax the entire GDP. Okay? But that's not going to happen. Good question. Next question. Yes, sir.
Is there, those slides are great, but as we're seeing when it comes to the education lobby, the second that they hear reform, they just run off on a runaway freight train. Oh, you're trying to mess with the schools, you're anti-student. Is there a really like 1 or 2 sentence rebuttal that those of us who want the reform because of the good solutions that we see, that we can basically blur out to somebody who otherwise is probably going to start closing their ears the second they hear the word reform?
Yeah, so I've had the pleasure and the privilege of going around and meeting with educators, and actually they don't care that much, as long as it's not a cut. A dollar for dollar swap. That's what we're talking about. A dollar for dollar swap. Then that's one of the things you got to say. We're not talking about cutting. Now here's what some might say. Oh, you're taking local control. There's no local control in school. Guys, they do not have local control. They don't. Everything's regulated by government. Now they can go get an INS bond and they can spend that, but even that's regulated on where they can spend it. There is not local control. That's a myth. It's not true. Our schools are heavily regulated by the government. Heavily. And when they say, oh, local control, wait, you have local control, so why are you complaining about unfunded mandates? Just don't pay them. Well, the state's making this. Well, that can't be. You have local control. There's no local control in education. That's just not true. So that's the only two things. They don't want to cut. Nobody's talking about that. Okay, we know our teachers need to get paid more. We're all on board with that. Teachers need to get paid more. Teachers are not getting paid enough. I get that. Okay? We need to be competitive in that arena. Okay, yes.
Well, you just added a point to my 2 points I already had. I've been in education for about 22 years. And I hear people say that teachers need to get paid more because they're not getting paid enough. But there's part of that sense that's missing. As compared to what? Because, you know, teachers got a raise, every teacher in the state got a raise of $3,000 in 2000. And the next year they say we're not getting paid enough. And so then, well, at what point is that enough? It's never enough. Because they know if you keep complaining, you're going to get some more. And so it really is. And I say secondly, it doesn't matter which option you give people paying taxes. If they have a choice, they're not going to pay taxes.
Well, of course.
And the only way that you have to give people pay taxes, you got to force them to pay taxes. Because they're not going to pay taxes willingly. And so if you say sales tax, that we're going to give you an option to not buy that TV and not pay those taxes, we're just not going to buy the TV. Because so much of when people have an opportunity, they'll figure a way to buy that TV without paying the tax. They don't try to figure out how to not pay those taxes.
Okay, so I want to preface this kind of very carefully here. That is a statement that is made up with literally no factual data whatsoever to back that up, because people spend money today and pay sales tax. Today.
The largest retailer in the world says price sale. That's what Walmart. And again, people do.
And people go to Walmart and they pay sales tax every day.
Well, but you know what? Walmart knows that we can't change the taxes, we sure can't change the price. And that price brings down the taxes that have to pay also. And again, when they do that, they know that you got that filled in somewhere. About 12 years ago.
I would encourage you to go look at Stafford. Stafford's a city that eliminated. So you should be able to get your data to support that. Because if they eliminated property taxes in Stafford and are living off a consumption tax, which they are, yes.
But I know a big problem in Stafford was they had too many churches. And in Stafford they had too many churches. And so they said the churches were buying property and taking it off the tax roll. And they wanted to figure out, well, how can we stop that? Because there are just too many churches. For some reason.
Yeah, I mean, we're getting off into the weeds. The point being is people there are still spending money.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't stop spending money because their sales tax money.
Stafford is a very small city in Fort Bend County right next to Houston. And
I would encourage you to get the data to support the position, because there is none.
Let me ask you this. You said the school districts don't have local control. Somebody told me this.
Yep.
They said the state gives no school district money for football stadium. Yeah, every school district got a football stadium. Where's the money coming from?
That's one of the things we talked about earlier. That is at the local level. That's your INS bond, your school bonds are called interest and sinking, which is separate from M&O. So when you look on your tax bill, you'll have M&O and you'll have INS, which is your interest and sinking. We're not talking about the INS, we're talking about the M&O. The INS is decided by the voters. The M&O is not. The M&O is mandated, so to speak, because we got to fund public schools, the maintenance and operation. Me personally, I'm opposed to funding any football stadium. I think it's immoral to do it, for sure. I certainly think it's immoral for somebody to vote for me to pay the tax that doesn't have to pay it themselves. That's my biggest argument in the school bond. The first people that they will exempt from an INS are sitting right there. But they will let them vote to come and tax me. And that's immoral. Now, if a community wants to do it, more power to you. That's a local issue. Have at it. But that's not an education issue.
Yeah, and again, the thing is, school districts complain we don't have enough money for education. But those football stadiums and the support.
I get it. We're getting into, I know, we're getting into political ideology, though, instead of the problem. So this is a good segue for me to remind y'all. The reason that this problem's not getting solved is because we start mixing issues. So here now I've talked about the M&O school property tax, now we're talking about football stadiums. Bad idea. It's a bad idea. Because then you're going to talk about spending, and then you're going to talk about this, and now we're going to talk about this, and now we've thrown all this at them, and we're yelling at them, and they done forgot that we even used the word M&O earlier. That's already done and gone, and it's over with. We have got to be one voice on this thing. Eliminate the M&O, go to a consumption tax while broadening the tax base, because we firmly have the numbers that show that we can land at about a 10% sales tax, which in my travels across the state, people are more than willing. Matter of fact, when I usually take a vote on this, I get 80% or more almost every single time. Yes, we're willing to do that. Absolutely, get it off of my property. Get it off of my property. Yes.
Is there, in some of these models, is there a way to show with some pretty reasonable forecasts of how going to that model would actually increase the dollars that school districts receive?
Okay.
Or did I miss
Well, the
something?
problem with what you're saying there is that's up to the legislature on how much money they give them. That's not a collection issue. Right? So we never said anything about increasing dollars. We said $1 for $1 swap. Okay? They already have a funding formula that they've got that says per student allocation in whatever area. They got this formula, they plug it in, boom, it goes. We're not trying to change any of that. So whatever they get today per student, they would get under this system. If they brought in extra money on the sales tax, which is predicted actually, then they could give teacher raises or do something with the retirement system. This is what we pay them to think about, right? We pay them to be financially smart, think ahead. If we bring in extra, put it in a savings account for education, whatever you do not take that money and spend it nowhere else. We are requiring a constitutional amendment to lock this money into education. Absolutely not just cutting them a blank check and saying, just go to the sales tax and you decide how much of that you want to use on education. No, we're saying the sales tax increase to buy down the M&O, you must constitutionally protect for education. I'm not trusting those guys with that. Good question, though. Yes, sir.
I'll say Charles Johnson, he has an organization called Pastors for Children, and they advocate school, just public school, in the state of Texas. He was here about a year and a half ago, and he talked a little bit about that too. And he said one of the problems that they had with taking away from the property taxes, using consumption tax, was when recessions happen. He said there's less money spent. So he said that problem work because it's not a state. Property taxes are stable. You can predict it. He said, but a consumption tax, you can't predict it because recessions are going to happen. They're going to happen. You're not going to be able to stop. The longest running one right now is in Australia. They've had the expansion of their government for 27 years. He said, but that's an anomaly, everywhere in the world. But he said, so.
So do you think education has been funded on property taxes since the inception of this nation?
No. I just said property taxes now. They fund education and government because they are stable. And you can predict it. All right? But in a recession on consumption tax, you can't. They will go down.
They will. And we'll have boom years, we'll have down years, we'll have up years.
Yeah.
And as a responsible government, you make adjustments. I can assure you that